Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Emily here, and in today's video I've got two cards that I'll be making using some stencils and some ink blending. So these stencils I think are from Tim Holtz, but I'm not exactly sure. They were ones that I found at my local Tuesday morning store a couple of years ago. Anyway, I've got this, the Distress Oxide ink colors I'll be using. This first one is Iced Spruce. I'm using a blender brush and blending it from that top right corner down towards the bottom left corner, and I will do a gradient effect with it. And I'm ink blending on a piece of my Cougar 110 pound cardstock. I've got a scratch piece of typing paper underneath of it because it was easier than wiping off my craft mat afterwards. So when I've finished with that Iced Spruce, I will come in and use my Abandoned Coral and blend from that bottom left corner up into the Iced Spruce. And where they meet, I will have them blend just a little bit. They'll kind of be fading off into each other a little. I'm using that piece of paper to clean off my brushes in between colors because I'm using the one brush for the two colors. So then I go back in with that Iced Spruce to blend it into that Abandoned Coral. And then I will be using another stencil. This is more of a tattered diamond stencil. I use some purple tape to adhere it down onto that same Cougar cardstock. And then some Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink. I will blend that up from one of the bottom, or one of the ends of the cardstock. And then I will be using green on the other end. Again, doing that same gradient effect. Darker at the bottom and lighter as it works its way up. And again, I'm kind of rubbing off the extra ink from that brush onto that scratch paper. And then I've got some cracked pistachio and blend that up into the peacock feathers. The peacock feathers did not give me quite the gradient look that I wanted near the bottom, so I did come in with my Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink to darken it up just a bit at that end. And you can see the effect that I got there using that Lucky Clover on top of the cracked pistachio. So I remove that and you can see how that looks, and I love how it turned out. It gives just such a nice, crisp, clean look when using a stencil. It's really pretty. And then here's that polka dot one. And then I'm using my Tonic guillotine paper trimmer, and I will trim off a little bit off of the one side of each of these. I wanted to have a little bit of the card base showing through on each of these panels. I'll have just a little bit showing through on one side of that blue and green, and then some white showing on the left and the right hand side of this polka dot panel. So I cut a little bit more off of the polka dot panel. And then here I've got a stamp set by the Simon Says Stamp Big Thanks Words stamp set. I'm using one of the coordinating thanks dies, and I will die cut that from some white glitter cardstock. I die cut that twice, one for each of the cards. And I also die cut it from some craft foam for some added dimension. I didn't want to have to die cut and place tiny strips of foam tape on the back of the word. And then here I've got this Firefly Nesting Hearts die set. I will use the largest die in there and some printed vellum that I have, and die cut two of those. And here you can see them. There's a larger polka dot and then a smaller polka dot printed vellum. And so I cut them out together. I also die cut them together to save some time, and it's thin enough that I was able to do that. So here you can see both of those hearts. And I've got some card bases pre-cut, and I will be using my EK Tool scoring board to cut or to score them at 5.5 inches to create top folding note cards. These are A2 sized cards. And then I go ahead and use my Teflon bone folder to crease those. And then I've got this extra piece from that polka dot blended panel. I will flip that over and stamp the sentiment on the back of that twice, one for each of the cards as well. I'm using that is just the tip of the iceberg sentiment from that set. And I will start by stamping it on the left hand side of that thin strip of paper that I have right there. I will stamp that down in my Gina K black onyx ink. And then I stamped it on the right hand side as well, and then here I've got my craft knife and a ruler, and I am trimming those down so that there's not an excessive amount of white on either side of the sentiment. Here you can see those. So then I will start adhering everything down. I've got a couple of pieces of craft foam here that I cut down to fit behind those ink blended panels, and some 1/4-inch score tape. I apply that onto the back of the ink blended panels, and then the craft foam, and then more of that score tape. I just put more of that tape on the back of the craft foam and then removed that release paper and adhered both of those panels onto the card bases. And here I was just trying to decide what orientation I want that panel to sit, whether I wanted the green on the top or on the bottom. And then when I've figured that out, I go ahead and adhere that down to the card base. And I've got some Distress Collage medium in the matte finish, and I will use that on the back of the glitter die cut thanks words, and then place those on top of the craft foam and put an acrylic block on those as they dry. I am lining that up to make sure that it's nice and straight before I put the acrylic block on there to weigh it down. And then I've got those 2 vellum hearts. The one with the smaller polka dots is going on the polka dot stenciled background, and then the larger polka dots is going on the diamond background. I'll use some more of that Distress Collage medium in the matte finish adhesive on the back of that foam that's on the back of the die cut, and adhere that over top of the heart that's sitting on the stenciled background. And it will overhang on the left and the right hand side, which will adhere it onto the card panel. I've got my T-square ruler here that I'm using to make sure that that thanks is nice and straight. And then I put an acrylic block on there to weigh it down again as it dries. And then I will adhere that other one the exact same way. So then I've got these sentiment strips that I added some foam tape on the back of. And I will use my T-square ruler again to line those ones up nice and straight and centered on the card. And I will press that down, make sure that it's adhered well. I've got some sequins here that I am adhering down, some heart iridescent sequins and then some sparkling clear ones. Again, using that Distress Collage medium in the matte finish and my wax pencil to adhere them down. And that finishes these cards for today. I love how these ones turned out. The stenciling and ink blending is just so much fun to do, and it gives such a fun look and such crisp, clean lines, which is so fun. Anyway, I love how these turned out, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope everyone is staying safe out there, and I will see you soon for another video. Thanks. Bye.